First question is a question from Ms. Benson and Mr. Hayes.
All right, thank you, Tim. Mr. Hayes, do you believe the Chapter 70 formula is working for our towns? And if not, how would you propose to change it? How would that plan improve education?
Well, as you look at the Chapter 70 funds, I know that the general consensus is we always need more money for the schools. And it is being indexed for inflation. There are certain aspects of it, because it is a 15-year-old formula, that aren't accounted for. Things like having to, now we've got MCAS in place, being able to have those standards met. But I think if we go and look at the formula very carefully, there are going to be aspects of it that look like we need to increase the foundation budget. But there are some things in the last 15 years where costs have actually gone down somewhat with technology and advances. So I won't necessarily say the default answer is that we need to increase funding for schools. We do need, as you look at us against the rest of the nation, we are not out of line when it comes with dollars per pupil that are spent here in Massachusetts. Where we are out of line clearly is most states, when you look at how they fund the schools, municipal funding versus the state, for most states about 60% of the money comes from the state level and 40% comes from the local municipalities, which is property taxes. Here in Massachusetts, we're upside down on that. We have about 60% of the funding overall, as you look across the state, coming from local property taxes. So we do need to look at when you're funding the schools, as Jen did mention, that the property taxes are the most regressive. You've got seniors living in their houses forever, they've been paid off for a long time, they don't have the income, and they're being taxed out of their towns. And the rest of us are also seeing the impacts of having our taxes increase over and over every year. So we do need to look at, when it comes to things like special education, start increasing the place where we fund that from. Do it at a more state level where it can be spread across more broadly.
Ms. Benson, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Thank you. Well, unfortunately, part of my question was how would that improve education? I think that the biggest thing we can do is understand what the Massachusetts frameworks are, what our curriculum is, and tie the funding directly to that. We have very high expectations in Massachusetts on what our public education ought to do for our students and for our future. And the current formula doesn't work. A big problem of it is the foundation budget. It hasn't been updated in 15 years, but it also isn't indexed to national census salary increases. It's based on salaries from prior to 15 years ago. I believe it was 1989. So this is a really broken system that we're using to fund education. And the other areas, we know in the last 5 years education funding has been reduced from the state, and not only in the direct funding through Chapter 70, but also in other cuts such as transportation reimbursement to individual school districts and a lack of funding of the special education circuit breaker. So these are also areas that fall under education funding, but one thing I do agree with my opponent is that we need to funnel more through the state and less directly through property taxes. But understanding what that formula means and what it incorporates is vitally important to be able to make that change.
Mr. Hayes, you have a minute to respond if you'd like.
Yes, as far as improving education in Massachusetts, we have plenty of examples in this state of schools that were performing poorly, particularly in the inner city areas and the more poor sections of Massachusetts, or those where English isn't a first language. And what is working, we have plenty of evidence, is the accountability and giving more local control. Charter school initiatives that are proving to work out in Worcester, and even in Washington, D.C., we have examples of places that were one of the worst school systems. But when you gave more local control, you gave the local superintendent and school commissioners out there the control to hire and fire, merit-based pay, lengthen the school day, hold the teachers and the students accountable to those standards. Those types of things are working. It's worked in the schools here in Massachusetts where they've allowed charter schools and actually, schools to actually be closed down and opened up under new operations, where with the same dollars, they're able to produce the product we're all looking for, which is an excellent education for our students in Massachusetts, regardless of where they live, what country they're from, whether English is their first language, what their background is. Every student deserves that same opportunity for an excellent education.
Thank you. Ms. Benson, you can have 30 seconds if you wish.
Just a quick thing, we are hard about the unfunded mandates. We have time and learning requirements. We also have technology requirements that we must keep ratios within schools. And these are things that are currently not taken into account by any of our education funding from the state. So it's very complex, and I would urge you, this is well over 50% of the budget in every town in this district, and I urge you to think of that when you are making this choice.
30 seconds, last word if you wish.
It is true that school funding can be complex, and so can funding at any state level. Also, though, I wanted to point out that it isn't just a matter of school committee experience that can qualify you for a job like this. I bring 20 years of experience in the business world where customers have trusted me, and IBM has trusted me with the financial stakes of these hundreds of millions of dollar deals and contracts over several years. The financial analysis, the return on investment, the budgets are just spreadsheets with different column headings and row numbers. I'm dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars as opposed to a $15 million school budget. So I'd like us, as has happened in the past, I wasn't going to bring this up, let's keep things on the issues. We're both intelligent people, we both have background, but let's talk about the issues. I honor your school committee experience. I would expect that you would hopefully honor what I've done in my life, and we can keep this on the issues as opposed to who's got more intelligence or is ignorant of certain facts.